restoretherepublic.net. So check it out.
Welcome back to the Reality Report. Joining us now to discuss that creature, the Federal Reserve, is author and filmmaker G. Edward Griffin. Ed Griffin, welcome to the Reality Report. It's a pleasure to have you here. I want to talk to you about a lot of things that are going on in the economy, and I want to talk to you as well about the Federal Reserve. You know, it's a big topic right now because the dollar is dropping, because the bailouts, because they're pumping money into the system. And we have a lot of people who are now learning about the Federal Reserve. They're learning about it because the Fed's pumping money into the system. You know, they're wondering where all this money is coming from. And I'd like to give our viewers a brief overview of the Fed, how it came into being. And I'd also like to ask you, what inspired you to begin looking into the Federal Reserve System?
Okay, Gary, that's a long, boring story. I'll try and make it a short, boring story about how I got involved. It was one of those evolutionary things where some years ago I was active in producing a series of video documentaries, and I decided that a good topic would be inflation. What's the cause of inflation and what to do about it? So that started me to research on that topic. And, of course, right away that leads you to the Federal Reserve System, which is the engine of inflation. So I started to gather my research materials. I got whatever books were already written on the topic, and I did some library research and dug into some old newspapers and that sort of thing. And I filled up a box full of research paper, and then I never did produce the documentary. I got sidetracked on something else, and that box of research just sat in my closet for quite a while. And then some years later, a lady who was the president of a local activist group in the Los Angeles area asked me if I would come to her group and give a speech on taxes. I said, well, I didn't know much about taxes except they were too high, and I was against them, but what else can I say? I said, but however, I can perhaps say something intelligent on that hidden tax called inflation. Would you be interested in that? And she said, oh, sure. So I did. I cobbled together a talk on that topic, and it was well received, and they encouraged me to put it on the road, which I did, and that grew into an all-day seminar called A Crash Course on Money. And I was really having a good time putting that seminar on. And then finally one day I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, you know, Edward, you don't really know enough about the real markets out there. You know about inflation and the banking system, but people were asking me what to do with their money. They thought because I knew about the Federal Reserve that I was, kind of a person that could tell them how to protect themselves from inflation and what kind of investments to make and all that sort of thing, which I was not qualified to do. So I stopped the seminars and I enrolled in a school. It was the College of Financial Planning for Financial Planning in Denver, and I attended that for a couple of years and got my certificate, not because I wanted to be a financial planner, which I didn't and I am not, but I got my certificate to be one, and my goal was just to learn about the real markets and what investments were and so forth. So, and then I started to do research for the book, and that took 7 more years. And so as you can see, it was a long story. Finally, I finished the book in 1994, and it's been kind of an amazing carriage ride ever since then, because I thought that nobody really was that interested in reading about the Federal Reserve System. But to my amazement, the book has sold very well, and it's been selling even better of late now that we've got this financial meltdown. We're in our 24th printing of the book. Every time we print it, I update it somewhat, try to bring the statistics up to date and replace the old names with the new names. But the story doesn't change. So that's the story behind it. And so what is the story about what the Fed is? What I discovered, Gary, and you know it so well, is that the Federal Reserve System is not what it appears to be at all. It's one of the greatest, what shall I say, it's an impostor that you could ever imagine. It pretends to be a government agency. It pretends to be an institution of public-spirited servants who were defending the economy of the American people and trying to stabilize the purchasing power of the dollar and all of those things, when it is none of those things. In fact, what I discovered is that the Federal Reserve System, instead of being a government agency, is really a cartel. It's a cartel, just like a banana cartel or an oil cartel or a sugar cartel. It happens to be a banking cartel. The purpose of any cartel, regardless of what its public pronouncements are, the purpose of any cartel is to expand, enhance the benefit of the members of the cartel. And so the Federal Reserve chairman and the boards of all of these Federal Reserve system banks around the country, they have one primary objective, and that's to enhance the benefit of the banks. And it wouldn't go over too well if they said that in their public pronouncements, and so they say other things. They say, well, we raised interest rates today because we want to put a lid on inflation, because inflation is bad for you folks. Now, so it's always they're doing it for us, you see. And everybody says, well, that's wonderful. I'm glad we've got these wise and benevolent leaders doing all that for us. But when in reality, if the chairman said, well, we raised interest rates today because we thought we could get away with it and enhance the profits of the banks, that wouldn't go over too good. So anyway, the first thing I learned about the Federal Reserve System was shocking, and that is it wasn't what it appeared to be. It was a cartel, and what they did is they wrote their own cartel agreement, and then they brought the government into it. They influenced politicians. That's another story as to how they did that. But they got the politicians to take their cartel agreement and enact it into law. They called the cartel agreement the Federal Reserve Act. And now all of the banks and all the financial institutions have to comply with the cartel agreement or they go to jail. So it's just the opposite of what it appears to be. People think that the Federal Reserve System was created by the government as a means of controlling and regulating the banks. But in reality, the Federal Reserve System was created by the banks as a means of controlling and regulating the government. And that's the reality of today. I used to say that and people thought I was a wingnut of some kind, but now it's out in the open and you can see it. The banks are in trouble, and so instead of helping the people, they're fleecing the people, taking their money from them and giving it to the banks, all in the name, of course, of helping the people.
Now,
so in a nutshell, that's the story.
This is not the first central bank for the United States. There's been a battle over this for years.
That's right. We've had three of them.
Three. So this is the third one.
Yes.
How did we get to this? What happened? I mean, those other banks, they disappeared. The charters expired. And we're trying to do the same thing now with this Federal Reserve by introducing audits, abolishing the Board of Governors.
Well, excuse me, Gary. They didn't just expire because they got tired and worn out. They expired because there was strong political opposition, and Congress refused to renew their charters. It was a battle in both cases.
So now,
these guys just don't go away.
So now we have this Federal Reserve, this central bank in its current formation, doesn't have a charter that could ever come up for expiration. I mean, they must have. They obviously planned that out.
Oh, right. It doesn't have an expiration date or a renewal date. But, of course, it can be rescinded at any time. Congress created the Federal Reserve through an act of Congress. Well, Congress can undo the act. They can just, get rid of it. They can abolish it anytime they want to.
Now,
but of course, they don't want to because most of these congressmen are so intimately connected with this system. They benefit from it. The key players in this whole financial structure are some of the biggest contributors to the campaign funds for these politicians, and plus, they've got little side deals.
Plus, they have all the pork they pad into their bills. That pork could not otherwise be funded if there wasn't a Federal Reserve to do so. Am I right?
That's absolutely correct, yeah. And I'm not sure that many congressmen think about that, but they just know instinctively that they don't want to touch the Federal Reserve System. It's a big, powerful creature, and they don't want to do battle with it, and they know that somehow they benefit from it.
So let's go back to 1913. Who were the gentlemen